let's discuss some of the other corporates as well. And, you know, we've been talking and exploring the possibility that the defense sector may have as a whole in the market for a very long time. So let's welcome on board Jayant Patil, who's the whole-time director and senior executive vice president at L&T Defense, joining us on the show right now. Jayant, morning. India may buy at least about 100 billion worth of defense equipment over the next 15 years. That's what projections seem to be indicating. Tell us, how is it that you at L&T Defense plan to participate in the defense story in India, and also what are the areas that need immediate attention according to you within defense that up until now have not been addressed?
Opportunity in India on purely the capital side is at least 1.5 to 2 times larger than the number you said over next about 10 to 12 years itself. Because ours is a country which typically today spends about 16 to 20 billion dollars every year on capital purchases, and I add to it the capital plus some portion of revenue which is equivalent to a capital. So if we look at typically a decade, it's little more than 200 billion dollars in a straight line curve, and there's obviously, as the economy grows, there's a further growth. Now the few things obviously the government is already done and it's in pipeline, but there's something much more that needs to be done, and that's essentially to truly push the Make in India, push the strategic partnerships, push the imported programs to be converted into indigenous programs. There's something which would dramatically change the indigenous content of this industry. Specifically to say how would Larsen & Toubro deal with it, we already have established 9 manufacturing campuses for defense production, and they're all today operational. We only need to grow each of these to be able to do more. Not that today we are fully busy, we have part capacity at most of these places. So we obviously have much larger capacity today, and we would be in a position to deal with even if the numbers sizably grow.
You know, the defense minister has said she encourages the private sector to come into the defense space and, you know, set up joint ventures. How will this change the landscape, and what will this mean for the current PSU defense undertakings?
The defense ministry has been last 4 years, if one really looks at, has been in a position to open up quite sizably to private sector. Just a matter of comparison, before 2014, typically private sector was allowed to compete for about 5% of what the government was buying. The programs which have been cleared over last 4 years, this percentage now has shifted to about 32-33%. So whatever government is going to be buying over next couple of years, the programs which have been cleared for acquisition, the private sector now can take part in little more than 1.3 to 1.4 lakh crores of opportunities, and that's for all of us in private sector. Now this number is by the previous percentages would have been 15 to 20,000 crores. So that's quite a sizable jump for private sector to play a very significant role.
The company is also over 30 years of experience in defense space. Tell us a little bit about the total contribution of defense to the total revenue pie, and how much will it increase over the next 5 years then?
Our revenue today is typically about 5% of what we do at Larsen & Toubro's level, and next 5 years obviously the company is going to be growing, because that's one thing unique about Larsen & Toubro, that we continue to be growing as the times pass. With the enhanced growth of the company, we hope to be reaching somewhere around 10% as far as the defense contribution to Larsen & Toubro's revenues are concerned. Now this obviously would come out of multiplicity of programs and the locations that I talked about, the 9 factories which we today operate to do defense production. Now each of these are going to be in different domains. We are active in the land domain, we are active in the naval domain. Naval domain obviously it's on warships, it's on submarines, it's on varieties of weapon systems and engineering equipment, sensors which go onto the warships and submarines.
All right. Of course, we have to also extend out our congratulations as you've completed the design for BrahMos missiles. Tell us more about this order and what are the key orders in the pipeline?
BrahMos, we picked up a relationship with the BrahMos, the BAPL as it is called, the BrahMos Aerospace Private Limited. This was that 49.5, 50.5 equity based kind of a company which was formed between the defense research in India, and that's government of India's equity, and the Russian research organization, again blessed by the Russian government. Now this came up in 1998, and since 1999 they took some very special partners. So Larsen & Toubro was one of that major partner, and we actually started work with BrahMos in 2000, and it's now exactly 18 years. I would say informally almost about 19 and a half years of our relationship. So we've been doing very sizable amount of development as well as production for the BrahMos missile as well as the missile systems. Now when it comes to the missile specific subsystems, we do about 17 to 18 subsystems of this missile, and they are produced at 2 of our manufacturing campuses, which has been going on for quite some time. A lot of these have been indigenously developed based on the fundamental designs and some improvements which had happened in India. Now on the weapon systems for launching the BrahMos, we actually have done by now about 3 types of different weapon systems. The latest one that we handed over was what's called the quad launchers. That's something which goes on to naval ships which are very tight in space. Generally a BrahMos launcher would get onto a naval ship provided there is a sizable amount of space in the design of that warship itself. If it was granted, then you can fit it on. Now the new design is not taking that into account. The new design is for specifically suiting any existing warship, some amount of deck space that is available, open deck space. One can actually install it right there and be able to integrate with the ship.
Okay, so you plan to be at the forefront of India's defense program and aim to be a key defense player as well in the next 5 years. Tell us, what about how is it that you're going to plan to go about it?
Now going forward, we obviously look forward to some very major programs, and if I just have to say, you mentioned about next 5 years, we see a very clear decision by the government to be made on the submarine program. Some of the major warship programs are on anvil. Major gun, the howitzers, the long range artillery gun programs which are there in the pipeline, various other weapon systems which are there in the pipeline. So if we really were to look at what is going to be happening over next 5 years, obviously we see a very sizable traction in terms of big numbers. We expect that after the next term, the government would be on a sort of a investing mode, because this is a last possible year, and during this year there has not been much of a budget allocation for defense.
Right. Give us a sense, the company is well positioned to capitalize on the government's plan of increasing defense production back home on the home turf. You have 9 dedicated work centers for defense. Will this increase? Will this number go up?
Probably the 9 won't increase. Maybe we would add a unit here or there, but the scenario is some of the older units we may want to amalgamate within the newer ones. That's one side. Second, essentially what we would probably do is the mega programs would decide how and where we would actually be focusing far more. We clearly see that the times to come, the enhancement of the contribution from this sector would only keep getting enhanced, and that's essentially where we've been building a whole lot of capabilities. You mentioned the word about the indigenization. Larsen & Toubro has, right from its inception, right from the times of Mr. Larsen and Mr. Toubro in 1939 when the World War came, we actually have been designing and building in India. So we are one who differentiates with respect to anybody, whether it's Indian or the overseas players active in India, in terms of indigenous content. Many of our systems we make about 95-96% indigenous content, and there are some, the least on L&T's made equipment today would be about 50 to 60%.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us today.